apply it, learn about business, and really learning how to be independent. You need to be independent of your employer, be independent of like the medical system, be independent of almost everything, that you're so detached and you can really, rely on your skill set and your knowledge to provide for you and your family.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Get Wealth podcast. Super excited for this one. I have Garry on the podcast. He's a real estate entrepreneur doing some big things in the real estate world. I've been following you for about a year now, and I have a ton of questions for you just because I think, of all the real estate guys out there, gurus, you're one of the people that tells you exactly how it is and gives real valuable, directly applicable advice, which if I'm going to be mindlessly scrolling through Instagram and then I see something that I can, go apply 10 seconds later, that's a big deal. And I'm excited to get into the show. So thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me, Brendan.
So I'd like to start with how you got into it. That's always a good place to begin because it helps the viewer see the origin to where you are now. So let's just start there. How did you get into real estate? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, so I actually started this in 2018, didn't make my first check until 2019. I came out of the United States military, kind of did what everyone thought I should do. I was 21 years old, 22 years old, and I went to college and I was in class, and they were paying me a little bit every single month with my benefits, and I was like, man, this isn't gonna cut it. I mean, like when I look at what I would be making after I get my degree and all these things, I was like, this isn't gonna cut it. And I started seeing some ads from Grant Cardone. Grant started popping up all over my social media, and I was like, who is this guy? And he was talking about, this real estate and this passive income and all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, that's what I want. So I went on some Facebook groups, dropped my name. I was starting to go to some groups and meeting some people, and I then started door knocking. So I then, was coming across this wholesaling thing. They're like, hey, if you need some fast cash, do this wholesaling. And I was door knocking and cold calling for a year. And I would drive Uber and Lyft super early in the morning. I'd get up at, 5:30. I would do airport runs and just save up as much as I could to invest into my business. And I wasn't making anything. And I was also DMing a lot of people on Instagram to work from for free. And I don't know if you've heard of Thatch Win.
Yep.
Yeah, he's in the Seattle area. And I remember one day I was like, man, I should probably just cash it in. I haven't really gotten anywhere. And all of a sudden, Thatch hits me up on my phone, responds to like my 100th DM. And he was like, hey man, I'm not looking to hire, but I know a guy that's, looking to kind of scale his operation. He might need some help. And because I was offering to work for free. And then that's how I linked up with my business partner at the time. And I just started closing deals, and I started closing deals. He'd give me some leads. It was his first time too. And I was like, all right, I'll help you close these deals. And I hopped on the phone. I had a year of experience. And then 2 weeks into it, I got my first deal for $45,000. And I never really looked back since.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened then? You were doing it for a year. Did you not have the marketing budget, or why do you think you didn't get a deal?
I just didn't have a blueprint. No one really kind of told me, and there wasn't a lot of real estate wholesaling education back then. I mean, I got Cody Sperber's course for like $200. It was like a 30-day how to get your deal challenge. And I was like, 30 days to get my first deal. Hell yeah, $200, right? So I got the course, but there wasn't a lot of like, and not his course was great. I just didn't know how to implement it. But there wasn't like a lot of step by step, how you should do it this way. How much money should you plan on investing into your business? How do you talk to property owners? How do you talk to investors? How do you use these different tools in combination with each other to really make your business efficient? And I was just wasting time doing things that wasn't really producing revenue outside of my cold calling and door knocking.
Got it. Okay. So like the copy and paste template wholesaling simply put is right, find the deal and then go assign it. So you were cold calling and it was just a conversion issue where once you got them on the phone, even if it was a good lead, somewhere along the way it was falling apart, or were there not good enough leads? What would you say?
I think it was two things. I think it was the number of leads, and I just didn't know how to talk to homeowners. I mean, when I look back on it now, all of the normal kind of things you run into on these conversations, I just didn't know how to handle it. And so like, of course I wasn't really getting anywhere because these guys would tell me, "Oh, call me back. I'll think about it," or, just hit me up when you have a number, go do your homework. And I would just kind of do what they say, and I was like their slave almost. And, um, but now when I learned how to be a real sales professional, now I know how to go into conversations and have, some sort of authority and, be an expert and take them through a sales process and do it in a real professional way where I find that sellers have really, adopted to this and they kind of enjoy the process.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I haven't heard one story where someone gets to a point like similar to where you are now, where they didn't have to, screw it up or not know how to do it for like a long amount of time. It's easy to see the ads online of like the 30-day close the deal, but I mean that, and they can say that because it's technically possible, but the like you never play out that situation. It's like, all right, 30 days and you get a check, and then what? You do the same thing, or like your life is still the same way, there's no process behind it. And so what I really like about your content and like a lot of the stuff from following you is that it's about more of like building a business, not just the get a check and the quick in your face wholesaling ad. It's like, no, I mean, and I kind of want to get into that next of like what you guys have grown to now and what your company is, because it's pretty impressive. So how did that turn into this big operation that you're running?
Yeah, so what happened was as I was closing deals and we're making some money and it was consistent and kind of figured out, then you have to level up, right? So you have like most of these, what you'll learn is how do you get that first deal, but no one really talks about, well, where do you go from there, right? Because everyone's always about that first deal.
Yeah.
But it's pretty easy to get to, honestly, if you stick with it long enough. But then I was like, okay, I got to level up now. Now I have to become a sales manager because it's like I don't want to do this forever,
Mm.
right? So like I now have to learn how to go recruit, hire, manage, onboard like actual people to get these offers accepted. And then now we have to also find the person that's going to go sell the deals for us, right? And we have to have a relationships manager, and now we have to have like a strong virtual team to support that stateside staff.
Yeah.
So it kind of like turns into now you're really a marketing, sales, and operations company. Like that's what I'm not, I mean, I know real estate, don't get me wrong. I'm knowledgeable in a lot when it comes to it, but I wouldn't consider myself like the end all be all to real estate or an absolute expert, right? It's really just business operations. And so it just came from not, again, doing what I was doing before. I kind of started without knowing much, and I
Mm.
would go through these interviews, right? And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll pick the third guy I interviewed, and I would hire really fast. And I didn't really have like a scripted, like I didn't really have like I would write down questions I'd want to ask, but I didn't really do research or like figure out like, hey, this is what I should be doing. And I went through a lot of bad hires, man. I mean, a lot of people who were not good cultural fits, a lot of people who, I also didn't train them right. I didn't onboard them the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't hold them accountable to certain ways. And then I was like, man, I need to really level up. And then, we had a staff in Renton, Washington. We had an office. We had 10 sales guys in there,
Mm-hmm.
and it all came crashing down. Uh,
Really?
yeah, it was right. It was like January of 2020. Like it was right before COVID. Um, and kind of leading up to it a little bit, where there was like a lot of like tension in the business and everything, and then all of a sudden it kind of exploded with COVID, and then we had to go virtual. So, and what I mean by when it crashed is the company is that there was some, there's a lot of stuff me and my partner, we weren't doing the right way, we weren't managing stuff the right way, and we were just making a bunch of mistakes, and then
Mm-hmm.
we were forced to go virtual, and that's where we had to really become systematized and organized and do things the right way to manage virtual people, and that's where we were really forced to become better leaders and managers.
Wow. Because that's a completely different skill set than the stuff you're doing on day one of just trying to find leads and talking to sellers. Do you enjoy that as much or more? Have you found that as you have evolved as the from the the worker to like the owner and operator, has that been a process that is easy for you? And I guess how's that experience been of going from one point to the next?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's always uncomfortable,
Oh,
because you're really good at something and then you kind of have to then start doing something that you haven't done before and you're going to suck at it. And so like as you develop in business, you do get better at that, but your ego starts to puff up too, right? Because you're like, "Oh, I'm this big bad closer, I'm big daddy closer." And it's like, "Well, you shouldn't be." Okay? You as a business owner should not be. You should go find someone that is.
yeah.
Um, so it was hard for me to let go a little bit, but I have grown to really enjoy and actually like more
Mhm.
the building out of teams, right? Figuring out if you have not read this book and whoever's watching this, you have to read the book Buy Back My Time by Dan Martell. Um, he talks a lot about how business owners need how they can buy back their time. And now what's fun for me is I catch myself doing an activity and I figure out what's my hourly worth. If this activity is worth less than that, I'm like, you know what? I need to go ahead right now and find someone to fill in the gaps. And I enjoy that process a lot more.
Okay, so how do you go about determining when to make that first hire? And then can you talk a little bit about the reason that you would feel the urge to hire somebody that might not be a right fit? Because it seems like there is like an immediate benefit to hiring sooner, but then a longer term cost of having that person if it's not the right one. So how do you
Mhm.
manage, that timeline of like you got to hire somebody, right? And then when do you make that jump?
Yeah. So here's the thing, you never want to hire out of desperation,
Yeah.
right? So that is a horrible thing to do. That's what I did. You want to hire when you are comfortable, you understand all of the hats and all of your responsibilities, and you have the confidence that you can still see those responsibilities through and do it the right way while you're kind of going through this process. I suggest you have at least 3 months. Honestly, you should really have like 4 to 6 months of company reserves because you want to be careful. A lot of people's first big hire is going to be, at least in this industry, will be your acquisitions manager. And
Mm-hmm.
chances are the first guy's not going to work out. I mean, it's just the reality. If it's your first hire ever, you're likely going to drop the ball on it. They're
Yeah.
likely going to lose you money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just going to cost you money. So understand that I would assume already a loss when you bake that in and you can set real proper expectations, it's not as tough and it's not as like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is so hard when I experience this. But I would say when you have like 4 to 6 months of business expenses, you've closed at least, I mean, for me, I was closing 100 grand a month in revenue by myself, right? Year before I hired anyone because I felt it was important that I had that experience because you're also going to be like a life coach to some of these guys where, especially if you're virtual, they're talking to a distressed homeowners all day and they're getting told no all day. I mean, it can be a grind. And so you also need to kind of be there to motivate them and to remind them of the vision and empathize with the situation that they're in. And I feel you can be really good at that when you put yourself through the ringer, like you're going to ask your
Mm-hmm.
team to. So when I do all those things and I accomplish those things, that's when I know, okay, this is the time to hire, but you still need to be generating revenue. And I would say it's going to take a good industry standard, 1 out of 100 applicants would land you a decent hire, right? Where you have to take them through your entire interview process. You got to take them all the way through. And that can take anywhere between, you know, 2 to 3 months, but then it's going to take them probably another 3 months to really understand the business and be consistent. So by the
Mm-hmm.
time you're like, I need to hire until they can actually be closing deals for you, it's probably 180 days away.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, from there, once they actually so you're saying 180 days from when they're hired is when they're going to close a deal, or 180 days from start to finish?
Yeah, 180 days from when you're like, I am starting marketing. I'm going to post a job ad today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you got to account for that because if you're running on empty at that point at the beginning of that process, then that can take a real hit. So, okay. Well, it's no small task to get to 100K a month just on your own. So, I mean, that's a good goal for somebody to have. All right, now I'm going to hire somebody at that point. What's kind of a script or a playbook you would give somebody to get to that point? Because, like you said, on your own, full year, still having trouble getting traction. And then at some point, you wised up, you got some more knowledge, you met the right people, and that kind of changed for you. So what were those twists or those leverages you had to pull to get to that level?
Yeah. So you mean from like a tactical sales perspective?
Sales, yeah, whether that's like I wasn't doing this before, and then once I started doing these things, I was able to get to 100K a month on my own.
Yeah. So a big thing for me was when I actually look back as for what my script was and what I was using, it's actually quite embarrassing. But some of the things that are great short term but are horrible for the long term and will burn you out are like these very high pressured car salesman sales tactics. They actually will work. Don't get me wrong. They
Yeah.
will work. But when you're dealing with a process like this, a long sales cycle where it's not over when the homeowner signs a purchase and sale agreement. I mean, you got to take them through the closing table. And a lot of that is going to depend on what was their first interaction with the company. What did that process look like? So I would say for me, it was peeling away from that. And it was more so just asking some basic questions and really understanding where they're coming from. What are they really thinking and feeling? I'm not asking them very direct questions like, are there any decision makers? Or, why are you looking to sell? Those are too direct. I,
Mm,
I learned to ask in different ways where I could still get the information, but with a little bit less tension. And then
yeah.
I can really determine. So that was the one thing, was my question based framework. The second thing was, finding alternate solutions, creative financing, especially in this world that we find ourselves in right now with increased interest rates, and um, creative financing subject to seller financing, even some novations. I don't really do novations, but those are great things to be using. Um,
Hmm.
so I think creative financing, asking questions, and then credibility. Credibility, huge, especially right now. Like if anyone's doing SMS marketing or if anyone's doing cold calling, a lot more homeowners, what we're finding is that they're saying like they're not interested, but then what they'll do is they'll go on social media and then they'll like search you and they'll see and they'll be like, okay, let's see if this guy's legit first. So a lot of sellers are doing that now. They're going on to Facebook and looking at your profiles. They're going to your Google business page and looking at you know, your lowest star reviews. They're not looking at your highest reviews. They're going to look at your worst reviews. Um, and so that was kind of a friction point that I would experience because, sometimes we would use these high pressure sales tactics and then they get an escrow and they're like, no, like this and that. Oh, I realized I sold too cheap. Oh, I forgot I didn't talk to this person about selling. I got to go back and do that. And like all these things that we told if we did things the right way. And then, so I would say those three things were the biggest changes.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's a big deal. I think a lot of times it's easy to just let, a seller kind of get scared away with some of those. I think that's a huge point that is overlooked with sales is it's kind of like you're not really selling. It seems like selling would be asking those questions. You're more like trying to figure out what's the problem you can solve. Which that's kind of at the end of the day. Do you find that most of the leads that you're closing are you're solving a problem, or what's kind of that avatar that you look for?
Yeah, I mean, almost all the time, man. A lot of these people are just, I would say our ideal seller is someone that it's either a rental property. We do very well with out of state absentee owners,
Mm,
and vacants too.
got
So,
it.
at least depending on, for me at least, I'm not really into, it's just my style. I'm very objective. I ask a lot of questions, but I try not to. This is a little, you know, it's not what a lot of people talk about, and they probably wouldn't agree with this, but I try to actually limit my connection with the seller
Mm,
to a certain extent. I don't like to get way too connected or involved, emotionally. So I always kind of keep myself a little bit at a distance because it allows me to maintain my position of authority.
oh,
And I'm not
okay.
making as much of a friend. But so I find that the vacants are really good with this type of style for me because the seller is extremely detached from the property. It's a vacant house in the middle of nowhere that they don't even want. They've had it for 20 years. It's been a burden. They've just been paying taxes on it. They don't want to be a landlord.
Mm,
So those are my ideal types. Probates too. Probates are great. Never go wrong with pulling a probate list. If anyone's looking to see what are good lists to pull from, I would go to Foreclosure Daily They pull county records weekly, so it's fresh data.
Mm.
And you can they're obviously it's pricey, comes with a price, but raw leads. Um, those are my favorite types of sellers.
I had a lead in Washington, actually. I'm from Arlington, Washington. I don't know if you're
Oh,
familiar with the area.
I
Yeah,
am.
that's where I grew up. You're more like Pierce County, south of that, or?
We were doing the four main counties, so Snohomish, Thurston, King, and Pierce.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had a lead. It was a pre-foreclosure, and I found a law in Washington that was saying that you can't buy a property unless the seller is represented in some way. Are you familiar with that? And how do you guys handle that with pre-foreclosures?
Yeah, so with foreclosures, you do have to be careful in Washington State. It's never going to go in your favor, if something were to happen legally. So we
Yeah.
just avoid foreclosures altogether.
Mhm.
Um, the only time we've done them is when it was an inbound opportunity, and we felt a little bit more comfortable with seeing the transaction through.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but outside of that, we didn't
Right.
do any outbound to foreclosures. We stopped doing that in 2018, 2019.
Yeah, it seems to me that it would be like the fix to that would just be have somebody represent them or something like that. But yeah, that could get sticky, I can imagine. So are you guys just only cold calling right now, or have you branched out to direct mail or Google ads or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've tested a lot of different things. PPC did great for us.
Mm-hmm.
We had our own in-house guy who was great. We did a lot of texting. Texting was great in 2020. Texting is still okay now. We're noticing it's a much higher lead to contract ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Cold calling has stayed relatively consistent. I mean, you haven't really, the only thing that's really changed with cold calling that we've noticed since we started was the amount of leads per day per caller.
Mm.
So it used to be like on average 3 to 5 leads per day per caller. Like that used to be normal. Now it's like 1 to 3, honestly. Three
Mm.
is on the high end. But it's still the same as far as, somewhat the same from lead to contract. It's scalable. You can control it. Um, it's a great marketing channel. And it can boil down to just the numbers, and you can do a lot of testing too, right? I mean, right now you can test, several. I'm testing several different vendors to see which ones I like, and when you track those metrics, and you can make an educated decision on what's going to make sense for that marketing channel.
Why do you think that softened up with the leads per caller?
It's just, marketing costs in this industry is going to slowly increase. I mean, the marketing costs are not going to come down. A lot of companies are going to have to start pivoting with alternate exit strategies. You're gonna have to start doing some flips. We didn't want to start doing flips. I get it, but it was something that we had to do, because, I would probably say like 30% of our, well, maybe in 2021, I'd probably say it was like around 15% of our rev are flips. Um, but like cosmetic renos, you're gonna have to look at these as long and short-term rentals. Maybe assigning sub-2 deals, assigning seller finance deals, and knowing how to underwrite those. We're gonna have to start getting a little bit more creative because marketing costs. If you're only going off of assignments and you're in the Midwest or you're in a market where you're making, 10 grand a deal, you're not gonna last very long.
Yeah. Now that's a good point to touch on. So picking a market, what's your take on being local to one area? What do you there? Cause there's guys that are doing a lot of deals that are like nationwide. I know you guys are pretty narrowed down. What do you think is the best way? Is there a best way? What's your take on that?
Yeah, going nationwide, not suggested because it's not needed. I mean, you don't need to. You can have a very healthy business and you can do a lot of deals and you can make all the money you want right in your backyard. However, and obviously it'll be easier to do that, if you're flipping and stuff too. You can doing that in your backyard is far easier to manage at least.
Right.
But I do think there are better markets than others. And I do think that, just the West Coast in general has suffered, right? I mean, it hasn't been performing nearly as well as the East Coast. Um, at least on the East Coast, the assignment fees are still hovering between $15 to $20,000, which is pretty good. Midwest assignment fees are like 8,500, relatively low. West Coast, you still have big fees. I mean, we're ripping $90,000 fees and $60,000 fees, but um, it's just there's not a whole lot of not as much investor activity. And as an off-market dealer, we require investor activity or else we don't make money.
Yeah. Why
So
just
I would look at things like, obviously you want a city or a town with a population size of at least 500,000, right? You want probably the average home price to be, maybe at least 350. No, I wouldn't say at least 350. I would say at most 350, at least 2 to 250. Keep it somewhere in that range. I would be focusing on homes that have at least, 3 bedrooms, have at least 1.5 bathrooms, that are at least like probably 11 to 1,200 square feet. Stop targeting these, crappy little 500 square foot homes. They're very common in Washington. Like these little 700 square foot 1945 built homes. Stay away from those. No one wants those. It's going to be hard to sell. Not that you can't. We do a lot of them, but they're going to be tough. And then I would only focus in areas where you're around very strong school districts, right?
oh
Because if now don't because here's the thing, a lot of people make the mistake where they'll focus on areas where there's most cash purchases. Now that's important, but maybe by county or by city. But when you do your in-depth target marketing, go to the zip codes and the areas with the best schools, because if you do have to flip, you know that you're going to be in a decent market. If are not near a good school or a school at all, and there's a lot of cash transactions, you might have just come across, a part of town that you probably don't want to be flipping it. And it's gonna be extremely risky. So that's kind of like my layer of quality, at least, where I'm like, hey, I'm okay maybe doing a quick flip here.
awesome. Now, is there enough deals for everybody? Like
Yeah.
how big is the market for wholesaling? Can somebody still get started today with low to no money? Like, what's your take on, because you guys are doing a ton of marketing, getting a lot of leads. Like, there's how many leads are out there?
I mean, honestly, anyone can make money in any market, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there are deals everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But like I said, you have to understand that it is not the same as it was when I started. I could do like, hey, $500 buy list, quick skip trace, hop on a dialer. Maybe I can make 20 to 30 grand this month, like that, like take home. That used to be kind of a thing. You can't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, your marketing costs are too expensive. I mean, everyone has a call center, everyone has a mail house, everyone has a Google Ads company now. Everyone has all these things, and and now they're competing with one another, right? And now their prices are just getting jacked and jacked and jacked up. Um, you need to start with some cash. But Myra, I mean, I was on a call with a buddy of mine who lives in Florida, or excuse me, he's in North Carolina now. He moved from Miami, and he was wanting to start a wholesale company, and he's trying to map out how it should work. And I said, hey man, like, first off, if you're really starting out fresh, just get the bugs out first. Maintain your W-2 job. Do not quit. Okay, do not quit. Don't just jump out of your job. Just buy a cheap, simple list and at least work on some of your sales skills. While you're also and expect you're not going to get anything, just get it out. And then while you're doing that, go to some meetups and locate a couple of buyers, maybe find a broker that might know some buyers in the area, maybe another wholesaler, and don't worry so much about the dispo part. Just have them sell the deal for you. The more important thing is just getting some revenue in the door and getting in your reps. And then while saving up, while, investing into your education so you continue to learn and you're not blowing your cash on all this marketing, you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah. What's a realistic budget for somebody to do, 2 deals a month and be profitable?
Yeah, I mean, 2 deals a month, so right now, if you were to go off our numbers, right, if you were to do 2 deals a month, that means you need to have at least 110 leads. But, assume most companies from when I chat with other companies, there's not like a central database for this stuff, but most companies have about a 70% success rate. So that means I need 157 leads, right? So I need 157 leads per month. So that would be anywhere between 7 to 8 leads per day, working day, Monday through Friday. And if I have a cold caller submitting 2 leads a day, maybe you can do some texting. You need, maybe a cold caller and a texter, or you can get like 2 cold callers. That would be, I think that would be that's a fair thing to start out with.
Yeah, and cold callers, that's going to be probably outsource that overseas, $5-6 an hour, 5 days, 6 days a week, something like that.
Yeah, I would, anything below 550 an hour, maybe might be suspect management because there's just no incentive. Most of the time, if you're under 3 callers, most cold call companies are probably going to be somewhere between 650 to $7 an hour. And as you increase your count with them, they'll slowly drop to like, $6 an hour and then maybe 550 if you have like 8 to 10 callers with them.
Yeah.
Um, but that's, no one should be cold calling. I mean, you should not be cold calling. That is you don't need to do that. Don't Everyone gets worried about how do I manage the dialer and like do all these things. Guys, hire a VA to do that. Hire a VA to do all for you. If you're only getting 1 to 2 leads a day, maybe 2, 3 leads a day, you 100% can outsource that and have time to call these sellers. Call them in the evening. You can 100% do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So would you say like $3,000 a month? That's somewhere around there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say let's say you get a good deal on the cold calling, to 160 hours a month, yeah, add in an extra grand in there for some softwares and miscellaneous costs. Yeah, three grand a month. And but here's the thing too. If that 3,000 is your last 3,000, I probably wouldn't put it in there right away, right? You have to wait for your marketing dollars to mature.
Right.
Give yourself like 6 months.
The
So
velocity of your money. Yeah.
yeah, because here's the thing. If you got like 20 grand, yeah, okay, let's do like 3 grand a month, month 4, month 5. Now I actually have some traction with these leads and I can close and get my money back in month 6. So don't let that last 3,000 go. I would spread that out.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think it's good advice to kind of parlay into going full time. My experience so far, I'm super small operations, just kind of me and my brother, but I've done about 12 deals to this point, and also a full time job flight instructing. So it takes up most of my time, but I've managed to kind of do a few deals here and there, a couple deals a month, and then it kind of slows down, and then but I mean, to be honest, the biggest obstacle for me is the continuous marketing budget, like having enough deal flow to not, run out and then have these lulls. But my next step, and you can tell me whether you think, what the right strategy would be, but I should be at the airlines pretty soon, which would give me, at least a base level of income to supplement the marketing a little bit longer. Do you think long term it's possible to have like a successful business that's ran the right way while doing it part time?
It depends what your goals are.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're only trying to, and this is where a lot of people kind of get stuck, because I get on a lot of calls with people that want to get started, and it's like if you're doing it for the active income and you want to build a business, then like you want to build this into maybe you have an office, maybe you have like a reasonable sized virtual staff.
Yeah.
If that's the type of person you are, then I would say your main goal is I would have 6 months of living expenses and try to save up between 4 to 6 months of business expenses. If you're the only one bringing in income for yourself. So, it's a lot. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot. But it's so worth it. It's so worth it because it will allow you some breathing room to really like build and take care of your business and not do this thing where hey, I got a gunshot wound over here, but I got to treat this over here and I got to get back to my work. And then I don't really, you know what I'm saying? I'm not really focused. You're not giving it your focus. But if you're the type of person that only wants to have the wholesale company to maybe buy a rental here and there, or you only want to, use it for tax purposes, and maybe you don't want to have this big company and you don't mind doing 1 to 2 deals a month, then I would just, try to make as much money with as you can with the airlines, because of your W-2, you can get loans. That's going to be huge. I mean, that's a massive perk, right?
Right.
Um, but it depends on what your end goal is and what you're trying to do.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Um, so what about you for your specific vision? Is it to build $1 billion wholesale company, or do you see yourself expanding into, developing, or, there's a lot of ways you can go. You've done really well with a lot of things, it sounds like. What's like the big picture end goal for you?
I really am passionate and I really like making people money. Um, especially when I chat with my buyers, someone gets a good deal, I see they made a lot of money. I really like that. So, a thing for me is I'm really using this wholesaling company as more of a learning experience. It's taught me so much about people and building systems and realizing the worth of my time and creating these off-market funnels. I'm gonna keep this up. I don't really want to scale it past likely, 3 to 3.5 million is probably where I want to keep it per year in revenue. Um, but then it's gonna be building out other strategic partnerships where I can help, source off-market bigger commercial deals. And then, maybe having some sort of fund in the future where we can take down these bigger properties. But that's where I want to be, is to help other passive investors make money, because the people who really win in this game are the LPs, the limited partners. Now, if I go to a syndicator and say, "Hey, look, I'm going to invest into your fund, and here's, $10 million, and I'm making a 6% preferred return, and then I get, 70% of the upside," and I don't have to do anything. I mean, and you get the tax benefits. I mean, that's a win.
Yeah.
And I enjoy putting people in those situations. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. At what point for you did it change from being about like, let's just get some money to these new perspectives? And how has your relationship to money changed? Do you use it as a tool? Like, I mean, it's important. I think if you don't have a lot of it, you're doing something wrong. But how has that process been for you with money?
Yeah, so I grew up in a household that was very, very cheap. You know, penny saved, a penny earned, and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I had to actually, that was a huge problem for me, is I was so attached, right,
Mm.
I was so attached to my account. It's like
Yeah.
how I felt and my attitude was determined by how big my account was
Yeah.
or how low it was. And that was extremely unhealthy. And I would constantly question certain investments, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing, right? But it came to a point where it wasn't as healthy saying no to so much, because I wanted to hoard all of it. It was mine, and I couldn't let anyone get in between it. Um, and that changed when I started realizing that, running a business comes with overhead. I'm like, okay, I have to spend this money. I mean, one, I don't really have much of an option.
Yeah.
So I learned to, spend a lot of money, spending, 40, 50, 70 grand a month sometimes. And it's a lot of money. But then when I started seeing the return on that, then I was like, oh, wait, but this is okay. Like, I don't look at now my marketing costs. I don't look at that as an expense. I look at it as an investment. Um, and then I also don't, when it comes to like masterminds network, I'm going to Hawaii tomorrow morning for a week on a mastermind. And you can't, I've learned to not even question going to those anymore. Like, someone invites me to a private mastermind, like, you tell me what it costs and I write you a check. I don't think twice about it, because those have been the most important and impactful rooms to be in.
Yeah.
um so I've had to create more of this detachment and also develop more of a mindset where, I have a skill where if I were to lose everything, I could still make a lot of money sourcing off-market properties. No one can take that from me. No one can tell me I can't do that. And I have all of the resources to be successful. And so I think with that confidence also helps you let go of money a little bit more, because it's there for you in the future.
Yeah. Do you think that there's like a relationship between when you're lower income it automatically is going to mean more to you. So you kind of have that sense of urgency about it. And then once you start making more, you have the ability to detach. Or do you think that if you don't frame yourself the right way, that the problem's just going to get worse as you get more money?
Yeah, it gets worse as you get more money. But the problem is then you don't make more money. Right. So
Oh,
like
I
we
see.
because we were hitting this ceiling. I was just constantly hitting this ceiling with revenue.
Yeah.
And it's like once we hit this number, it was like the company would not want to scale. And it came down to just be like, it's because we're not spending the money in the right places and we're not investing the money in the right places and we're like hoarding it like, oh man, look how much cash we have in the account. It's like, okay, cool. But I mean, it's just digits on a screen. You know what I'm saying? It's not really doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what it did is it gave me some sort of false sense of security. Um, it really provides no security for you. Like
Yeah.
with most of these banks, your money's only insured up to 250 grand. So like if you have more money in there, if something were to happen to the bank, you're gonna lose it anyways. And you're losing so much value on that money per year with inflation. You're losing 10%, near almost 10% every
It's
single year.
crazy.
So if I have 100 grand, next year it's worth 90, the year after it's worth 80. And so when I started like thinking, hey, I need to get this out of the account because it's either going to go to the IRS or it's going to go to inflation. So I might as well put it to something that's going to help my brand or bring revenue to my company.
Yeah. So up to this point, do you think that what you enjoy doing is the game? Like, are you I don't know how to say it the right way. Like, so you make a bunch of money. Is what you like doing continuing to make more money? And by make more money, I mean like run a business and do that, or do you use that to go, like travel, or like where do you go ahead and then place your time that you're spending with the money that you make? Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yep. So I like to do my first thing is how do I buy back time in my business?
Got
What
it.
are certain things I'm doing in my business that I don't need to be doing and that I can create an SOP and a system around and then let me go find someone to do that for me. That's the first thing that I do.
Mm,
Once I've then developed, and I also have personal goals. Like I have personal hobbies and goals that I take just as serious as my business.
yeah.
Because if I just, why wouldn't I? It's very important to me. It may not make me money, but it increases my quality of life. So how can I free up my time to go do those things? If it's, going to jujitsu twice a day, I can do that because I have the time to do that. If it's, I want to go camping for 4 days, or I want to go to Thailand and maybe the time zone's messed up and I need someone to take care of my stuff while I'm gone. Like you got to think about those things, but travel for sure
Hmm.
as well. And then networking.
Yeah.
So where can if I hear of some sort of mastermind going on, maybe it's a group that I barely know, but I'm really curious to learn about them and see what they're up to. Like that's the first thing I'm doing. Let's plan a trip. Let's go to a mastermind and let's meet some more people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And that's a common thing I've heard is it's more of like a leverage to do the things that you want to do. There's some people, it's just like the only thing is, like say somebody is like a really good basketball player or they like sports. It's like doesn't matter how much money they're going to make. That's what they're going to do. But there's the other side of it of like, if you get resources from that, you can, buy back your time. I think that's a good thing that probably most people fit in that bucket. Um, what do you think is the most limiting factor for people in their personal life to get to a level of abundance? I mean, I don't know if you agree, but I think most people are living in a lack of abundance where they have just enough time to like eat dinner and maybe just watch a TV show before they go to bed. It just doesn't seem like a really fulfilling life. Whereas a lot of entrepreneurs, people like yourself, they build a business that affords them a lifestyle where they can do what they want with the time they have. What what is the thing that's keeping like most of the population from getting to that point?
They just don't understand how money works.
Yeah.
I don't think they understand how the system actually operates and how here in the United States, it is designed to make you rich. I mean, I was in Belize a couple months ago.
Mhm.
To open up an LLC and to start a business in Belize, it'll cost you $3,000. The average minimum wage in Belize is like $3 an hour. How in the hell is anyone from Belize going to start a business? I
Right.
mean, it's just not like the odds are stacked up against you. Here it's like $200 and you
Yeah.
get your paperwork back very quickly. You can go open a bank account fairly quickly. I can go to credit unions and get a business loan if I need to without the government's approval and without going through this whole thing. Um, I just think people don't really understand that if you live in the United States of America, you 100% have the ability, white, black, purple, man, woman, anywhere in the country, you can make money.
Hmm.
Um, and so once I kind of figured out how to solve problems and then create systems and processes and also be willing to learn, I think that changed a lot for me. And that started by getting education and learning from people outside of the system. You know, when you're so stuck in the system and you're only listening to your teachers and you're listening to people that were maybe went down a more traditional route that made sense in the 60s and 70s, but doesn't quite make sense today, that's where you start to adopt these habits and behaviors and decision making where it's like you're really kind of you're working against yourself right now.
Yeah.
So I think people need to, get real with their ignorance about money, learn how to multiply it, learn about business, and really learning how to be independent. You need to be independent of your employer, be independent of like the medical system, be independent of almost everything, that you're so detached and you can really, rely on your skill set and your knowledge to provide for you and your family.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's well said. Um, Another thing I want to touch on is when you start doing things as an individual and not as an employee and working in a system, there's a direct relationship between the value that you have and the money you bring, like you mentioned about learning a skill that you can go and apply and make more money. And so to me it seems like that now turns into the better you can make yourself, the higher leverage you're going to have, the more money you're going to make. And so that even goes down to like now you got to think about how much sleep you're going to get, what you're going to watch, what you're going to read, how you're going to conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis, because your value is now like your business's value. What are the habits in your life that you've developed and a model that you've used to go through life and to like work on yourself, like going to the gym, whether it be reading? Like what does your daily routine structure look like?
Yeah, so I like that you asked that because I think that's one of the biggest struggles that a lot of entrepreneurs have. And I realized that with myself, and it would almost cause me so much stress and anxiety because I'm like, now that my time's becoming worth more, I feel like I needed to be doing things that were worth more, and I had to, and it's true. And so I really was like auditing myself, like, oh, stop that. Like I found myself scrolling, stop it.
Yeah.
But a couple of things really changed. I think first and foremost, one of the habits for me that changed way better sleep, more focus, more discipline is fasting.
Really?
Fasting is incredible. Obviously, everyone should consult their doctor before they do something like that. But the first thing I do, when you wake up every morning is, I'm a religious man, so I pray. 100 push-ups, 100 squats, go for a 30-minute run, get the blood flowing. And then I handle my very important to-dos right away, right? Operational stuff, urgent items, fires I might need to put out. I need to handle first thing in the morning. A lot of my business is held on the East Coast, so that means I need to be ready, locked and loaded, already done my workout by 7 a.m. Right. Um, so that's when I kind of start my work. And then, throughout the day, I block out time for things like this, right? I only block out time between right here. This is when I do, podcasts. This is when I do, important calls. Um, and then, doing things that are working on the business, so I'll have time blocks for, talking with brokers from commercial buildings, talking with private money lenders, doing very high level things that's going to bring a lot of revenue or wealth.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, on also working out, trying to fit in. I love doing jujitsu, trying to fit that in the evening. But one of the most important things for me, two of the most, as I would say, was fasting. I would do 72 hours fast and then only eat at 3 o'clock every day for the rest of the week. And I would do that all month. Sometimes I go on 30-day sprints. And then I'll back off for a little bit. Um, habitually like to say I don't eat till 3, and it's only one meal a day. I really only do that when I have a goal or a specific something that I need to get done, and then I remove my smartphone. I remove my smartphone. I lock it up in my safe in my closet. I have a little black phone. If people need to get in touch with me, they hit me up from there. And I don't touch my smartphone for a month at least when I go on these sprints. All of my social media and everything can be handled either via desktop, or I have VAs that will do it for me. Um, but that is the single-handedly, if you want to get better at life fast and get rid of the damn phone. I find that a lot of what happened, I would do this is, you scroll on Instagram and you don't even know this happens. And you can be the person that'll say, oh, I don't compare myself to others, but you do. Like, no matter how bad you want to fight it, you will compare yourself, and all it's going to do is hinder your ability to grow. And you don't need that. You don't need the noise. So, put down the smartphone, and when you find yourself, hey, typically I would scroll right now, it's going to feel uncomfortable, because it's an addiction that we form. So it's going to feel a little weird, but replace that with, an audiobook, replace that with reading. For me, what I would replace when I feel like I really wanted to do that, or because it's an endorphin kick, is you just start writing, do a daily writing session. That helps me come up with content. It helps me come up with ideas for my business. It helps me learn how to communicate issues that I might be having with certain relationships. So daily writing as well has helped a lot for me.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big thing. So, one question kind of on that topic, do you follow a certain diet? Like some people go the carnivore route, like low carbs. Like, do you mess around with that or find there's a way to, increase mental clarity based on certain foods? Obviously, like the junk food, that's not in the question, but like
Yeah,
food
a
specifically.
lot of people they kind of confuse this part a little bit. Like I saw someone post the other day, hey, I'll pay anyone a lot of money if they can write a nutritional diet plan for me. And I'm like, dude, look, if you guys want to like eat healthy and you want to maybe lose weight, I mean, you just need to stop eating so much. This idea, I weigh 213 pounds. Okay. And I'm 6'4", but I also eat like 1 to 2 times max daily. Right. Um, I think we need to stop shoving so much food in our mouths. And this thing that we eat 3 times a day is absolutely ludicrous. You don't
Yeah.
need to eat 3 times a day. You can survive off of one. You'll be totally fine. But if you can, I prefer just to stick it's not necessarily what you eat, it's all the stuff you're eliminating, right? So, I try to stay away from the carbs. I try to stay away from the sugars, like the sodas. And I find, especially at masterminds and stuff, when you have to maintain a certain amount of energy and be social, the carbs can be fairly detrimental. That's where I really figured out that I get tired off carbs. And the only way for me to maintain that energy throughout the day is if I only eat meat, because I don't get, dragged down. But I think people overcomplicate it. Just stick to just meat if you can, and stay away from sugars and stay away from pastas.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I follow basically the same diet. One other thing that I've found, I think I heard on a podcast, but seed oils are just really bad for you. They were kind of a replacement to, was it butter, like way back, and now big foods kind of just put it in everything. And it's really the stuff that you'll find that's in a plastic bag at the grocery store, like anything frozen lasagnas and stuff like that. And I'll find when I have seed oils, I'll just get kind of like the same way, like big meals, a lot of carbs, similar feeling, or just like lethargic. But I think diet is a big lever you can pull in your life for, focus and how you feel and overall, because that affects how you perform in your business and that sort of thing.
100%.
Okay, well, as we kind of wrap this up here, so someone listening to this, they're maybe they're interested in real estate, building wealth, whatever it is, whether it's real estate or non-real estate. What's a blueprint or some advice you can give to somebody that's like, day one, I'm broke, I don't know what to do, but I like what you're saying, and I think that's the way I want to go. What are you going to tell that person?
I would say that if you're absolutely broke, you have no relationships, and you have nothing, you need to get a sales job. And I would suggest you get a some sort of maybe sales job in tech or in real estate, life insurance, door-to-door solar. Great. Stack your bag and start going to real estate events, stack a bag, get some education, invest into yourself, become a better person. And then once you have that bag kind of tucked away after you learned a valuable skill and you made some money, that's when you can start investing it, into your own business.
Perfect. I think that's great advice. Lastly, this is the Get Wealth podcast. What would your definition of wealth be?
Oof, my definition of wealth is when you do the things, you have the amount of time to do the things that you love with the people that you love. If you have the time and the freedom to do that at your leisure, you are the wealthiest person in your own world.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think you just packed it full of value. Those kind of rapid fire questions, but all the answers were great. So I know I learned a lot. Anyone that listening can go take this and apply it to their life. So thank you for coming on the show. Where can people find you? Your social medias, anything you want to like promote or
if you guys want to reach out to me and chat, I'm fairly responsive on social. You can go to Instagram. I'm at actually I think my Twitter is the Mike Garry. I write most of my content on there. Instagram, you can actually get in touch with me a lot easier at official Mike J. Garry. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Mike Garry, everybody, get wealthy.